All right. Hey, everybody. I'm again Mason Cosby. We're going to talk about how you should stop scaling ABM and how you should start stacking signals. And if you were listening to Trinity session, this is kind of a maybe very intentional part two. So that's it. Let's go ahead and dig into it. You likely won't learn anything new today, which is always a great way to start. You likely actually have about 75% of what you need to launch your first successful ABM program. So I'm not going to share a secret sauce. There is no silver bullet. No one is coming to save you. It is entirely on you, and I'm going to help you figure out how to get there, but you got to do the hard work. So there's nothing that's going to be mind-blowing today. It's just going to be some really great structure. And it's step-by-step guidance. I should have already gone into that. As we talk through specifically how, it's going to be focused on frameworks that will help you think about ABM a little bit differently. And this will then actually give you the opportunity to move into next week with a more clear structure that you can actually get buy-in around. So if you're ready, you can then join the 22% of marketers that have successfully launched repeatable ABM programs. Here's how. I don't know about you, I've got two screens. So on one screen, I go ahead and pull up a Google Doc, or if you're like pen and paper, you can do that too. Write down the following categories: awareness, initial engagement, meaningful engagement, marketing qualified account, re-engagement, sales qualified account, and opportunity. You're going to want to write down these categories. The next thing, you're going to want to create a quick chart. And again, if you're doing this on a sheet of paper, I would do all those categories I just outlined down the sheet of paper. So all of these down the sheet of paper. Next to it, across the top, so kind of a XY axis, data, distribution, destination, and direction. The last thing, go ahead and message your teams. And if you've got questions, go ahead and drop those. Or you can just shoot me a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm listening to this guy talk about ABM. I would love your questions. I love to answer questions. And the last thing is information about implementation is absolutely useless. So you've been here today, you've learned a ton. If you don't do anything with it, you wasted your day, and nobody wants you to do that. So go ahead and set a time block. You can actually plan how to build your ABM program, or if it's not even this session, do something with the information today, starting next week. So what is ABM? I'm so glad you asked. ABM, as I define it, is a B2B revenue strategy that aligns marketing, sales, and customer success around a set of shared target accounts. There will be a definition here in just a moment. That then begs the question, like, what is ABX? What is ABX? Because I've actually been in conversations with CROs and CMOs where they're arguing about the differences of ABM versus ABX and how their ABX strategy is totally divorced and separate from the ABM strategy. That makes absolutely no sense, which then gets even more confusing when we talk about the idea of ABS. Like, what is ABS? Account-based sales or account-based strategy? And how is that different from ABX? And now we're even more complicated because we now got ABE. We've got this thing called account-based engagement, or I've had someone else call it account-based everywhere or account-based everything, which then begs the question, how is that different from account-based customer marketing? What is ABCM? Goodness gracious. And I don't know if you guys are seeing this new acronym that's coming up called ABGTM. It just feels like the letters keep getting longer. And I don't know the differences, because here's one of the challenges when it comes to ABM. When you throw out the idea of building an ABM program, people get a little sweaty. They get nervous because they're like, I've done that before and it didn't work. So now we rebranded it to ABE. And then that didn't work. So we rebranded it to ABS. So we rebranded it to ABGTM. Like, we don't know what we're talking about anymore. So in an attempt to create clarity, which is what I think people were trying to do, no one maliciously creates new terms to create more confusion. They may be trying to be a category creator so they can say they're totally different, but it's all kind of the same. Regardless, we tried to create more terms to create clarity, and it didn't work. It got more confusing. So now, again, I've literally been a part of arguments on ABM versus ABX in like the past 3 months with CROs and CMOs, when at the end of the day, when we think about what the goal is of an account-based marketing program or an account-based experience program or account-based everything or all these things, we all just want the same things. And we first want to get best fit potential customers to know that we exist. That is step one. Step two is we want to get these same accounts to understand the problems that they are facing. Step two. Step three, we want these same accounts to understand that we can make their problems go away, that we can help them. Step four is we want them to buy from us so we can actually help their problems go away. Then step, what is this? 5? Yeah, step 5. We want them to stay with us forever. We never want them to leave. NRR is better than MRR. And then lastly, we want them to buy more from us. That's it. That's about it. I've yet to find anything where anybody wanted anything else when it comes to a go-to-market strategy and a go-to-market plan. So when we look at this idea of ABM versus ABX versus ABE versus ABS versus ABCM versus ABGTM, they're all the same. And the reason I start here is as we talk about this idea of scaling ABM and how you should stop doing that, I don't want you to then say, well, we're going to go build our ABX strategy or ABE strategy. Like, no, we're going to stop doing all of it. We're going to break down to the fundamentals because, again, at the core of what we are trying to accomplish, regardless of what you call it, I don't really care what you call it, has no impact on me personally. But if you're going to actually create terms and you're going to use these terms in your organization, you need to create clear definitions. You want another example before I dig into what this definition is? Sales teams talk about leads and they say we want more leads, and they mean opportunities in the pipeline. And marketing goes and generates leads, and those leads are contacts in our database. Same word, different definitions, misaligned expectations, which is one of the greatest challenges with ABM. So again, if you're going to build an ABM program at all, or do anything around the concept of account-based, you need to align on the definition. And the one that I recommend is a B2B revenue strategy that aligns the revenue team, which is marketing, sales, and customer success, are in a set of shared target accounts. Man, that was a lot of information in a really quick time frame. By the way, hi, I'm Mason. I'm first a husband and a father and a Christian. And secondly, I happen to run a company called Scrappy ABM. In the past 3 years, I've sourced personally about $9 million in revenue. That's about a 17x ROI for a variety of boutique and bootstrap businesses. We are the only ABM service provider that delivers step-by-step programs for the quality of account-based marketing. So we do first programs. We get them launched, we make them successful, and we send our clients on their way. Because our goal is to equip clients to be successful without us long term. So that begs the question, because if a lot of what we focus on as an organization is helping people not fail with ABM, why does it fail? And there's really three core reasons. The first is a lack of sales and marketing alignment. I already gave the example of marketing is going to generate leads, sales wants more leads, they mean opportunities, and then as a result, marketing generates contacts, passes over qualified leads. Feels like this sucks. So marketing isn't speaking the language of sales. And I talk about this a lot. I did a whole other session on specifically marketing sales alignment. If you want more on that, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I'm happy to send it your way. But like sales really wants qualified meetings. They want those meetings to turn into opportunities. They want those opportunities to close. That's really it. So marketing, if you're going to align with sales, you need to speak that language. So that's the first thing. Second thing, it's really hard to measure. Quick example on the idea around scoring models. So people talk about we need to build a scoring mechanism. We need account scoring capabilities. When you look at account scoring capabilities, what it typically is looking at is third-party intent data that comes from some separate source that is then married potentially, if you do a partner play, with second-party partner data that then is also married with first-party engagement data, but that engagement data needs to be weighted differently depending on the persona within the context of the buying committee. That's then also married with firmographic ICP fit right information, right fit ICP account information. So we've got firmographics, potentially, firmographics are like revenue, headcount, industries. We've got technographics, like they're working with HubSpot or Salesforce or Marketo. We also then marry that again with, are they engaging with us and are the right people engaging with us? Also, if we have a partner play, are they already buying from our partner? Because that shows even greater intent. And we've got our 1 + 1 = 17 story. Let's have better together. And then also they're in market for different signals. You try to cram all of that into a scoring model that says, yep, these people are hot, really hard. And I've seen a lot of marketers spend a lot of time building their scoring models for a program they haven't launched. But the other challenge is they're like, well, let's launch the program. We can figure out reporting later. Well, when people ask, how's it going? If you don't know how to report on it, it's really hard to tell people how it's going and optimize the program. So ABM is hard to measure because we either spend a ton of time shifting everything or we don't account for the nuances and we just leave everything the same. So we have to figure out how to measure. I'll talk about that here in just a moment. Lastly, some of you are listening to this. The worst thing that can happen today, somebody hears about ABM, it's like, God, I feel super behind. We'll talk about that here in a moment because you're not, but I feel super behind and I got to go build an ABM program. So you're going to go to marketing manager Susie and say, hey, Susie, I know you're super slammed coordinating everything else that we also do, but I now also need you to build an ABM program. And then you're just going to throw it at Susie and say, Susie, this is a part of your job now. When what you just gave Susie is a death mission. She's going to kill her career or herself trying to accomplish this goal because she can't do it. She can't. ABM is organizational change. And you just gave a marketing manager the job to change an organization. So you've given her the responsibility and accountability without the authority to create organizational change. I have said this on every webinar that I've done for the past year, and it still happens. There's so much work to be done on this front. So don't just give ABM to somebody that already has a full-time day job and set them up for success. There needs to be dedicated ownership at the executive level that then helps foster the organizational change. And there's a group of tacticians, of course, that are doing the actual work of building the operations and the workflows and the different content assets, but it has to be left from the top. And if you're going to do ABM, you have to take things off of somebody's plate to add this on. Otherwise, it's not going to get done. Okay, so if you're sitting here, I have now talked like an entire PowerPoint in like 9 minutes, and you're like, I get it. We overcomplicated it. But I really want to build an ABM program, so I just have like one question. And again, I love answering questions. If you've got questions, go ahead and send them to me over LinkedIn. What's bothering you? And it's the what tool should I use question, because it's exhausting and it's infuriating because, goodness gracious, according to this chart, there were like over 16,000 tools. And what's worse is that this was from 2016. This was before the AI boom, where there's now 1,000 more tools. So if you're going to just get into, well, I got to get the right tooling in place to ensure that I have got the ability to actually execute this program, guess what? You'll spend 11 years just exploring these tools, not to factor all the new ones. If you did a tool a day, it takes 11 years. Same. But don't get me wrong, you do need tools to scale. But about 94% of B2B marketers and B2B organizations are launching ABM programs in 2020, according to data done by Terminus. But when we look at recent data that was done in like 2023, only 22% of marketers have actually deemed their programs successful, which means that like roughly 78% of marketers aren't sure how to launch an ABM program successfully. So again, I fully agree. Like, you do need the tools to scale. You should think about inevitably how to scale your program. I just think we should stop thinking about it now, because we can't scale something that doesn't work. So how do we think about how to make a program work? So glad you asked. We just need to answer these questions. Like, how do we get best fit potential customers to know that we exist? How do we get these same accounts to understand the problems that they're facing? How do we get these same accounts to help? How do we get them to understand that we can make their problems go away? How do we get them to buy from us to fix the problem? How do we get them to stay forever? How do we get them to buy more? And we're coming back full circle. Here's framework one. Again, the things that I asked you to write down, awareness, that's just answers the question. How do we get best fit potential customers to know that we exist? But then directly ties into, how do we get them to understand the problems that they're facing? Nobody buys things unless they have a problem. So they need to have problem recognition before they look for a solution. Once they're looking for a solution, how do we help them understand why you're uniquely the right solution for them? And then from there, how do we actually get them to buy from us? And then once they're a customer, how do we get them to stay forever? So that's the first framework. It's called an account progression model. And I also want to give context. This line goes both ways because it's not linear. People don't typically buy in a linear fashion, but the goal is that we've got programs that guide accounts from one stage to the next. So that's the first thing. Second framework, what we refer to as our 4D framework. Every program, playbook, campaign, whatever you want to call it, all of those things typically have 4 components to them. First is data. Data is a mix of targets and triggers. So you have to have right people to go after. And this is a huge miss, because often people build ABM programs around just targets. So they'll say, awesome, I don't get contact. This is what I did. This is my first ABM program. I'll tell you about it. I pulled a list of SaaS companies that were Inc. 5000 winners in 2020, and I said, we're going to go after these people. So I went after a bunch of targets and said, that's my targeting. They should obviously want to hear from me about how to continue their growth goals. It was a huge miss. Nobody responded because there was no viable reason to reach out. So it's not just targets, it's targets with triggers, AKA signals. Boom, full circle, signal-based marketing. There we go. That said, you need good triggers or signals to then give you reasons to reach out. So when you marry targets with triggers or signals, you then create highly personalized, nuanced, specific messaging. You've got right people with a real reason to reach out that then creates a specific thing you want to say to them. That's data. From there, it's then distribution. How do we plan to get in front of these people? So it could be ad programs, could be events like this. This is distribution. Right now, I'm distributing information. It could be LinkedIn organic content, could be any number of things, could be outbound email. All of these things are just distribution channels. So the question is, where do you want to distribute information for your audience that will actually get them to engage? From there, it's then destination. Destination is just a question of, where are we sending them to? And the goal of destination is to align with the trigger. The trigger gave you a reason to reach out that can inform you a little bit on where they are in their journey. based on that, you want to align that to the right next step content. Lastly is direction, which is just how do we track it? If you understand who you're going after, why you're reaching out, what you're saying to them, how you're getting in front of them, what you're sending them to, and how you track it, you got a playbook and a program. If you want to take a quick screenshot, I summarized it down like this and gave myself an excuse to take some water. And all right, when you put those two frameworks together, you now have an account progression model, which should function as the strategy for your program that is then married with activation plays, that 4D framework. And again, you've got list-based triggers and signal-based triggers. I'll give you a quick rundown on the differences. At your list-based, at some point, people have to know that you exist, and there's no engagement. So there's no signal to activate off of. But if you have right fit people, and the goal is just to help them to know that you exist and help them understand that they might have a viable problem, that's a list-based trigger. Again, is that perfect? Of course not. Ideally, we're building programs off of signals because signals convert better than cold audiences. But at a certain point, you have to have people know that you exist. So the goal is then to take cold audiences and drive them into places where you can capture signals that you could then build programming and playbooks around. And that is where we get into signal-based marketing. When you put these two things together, you have step-by-step programs or playbooks that guide people through their journey to actually becoming your customer. I also want to be super clear. This is not linear. There are plenty of people that have come inbound to Scrappy ABM that have been following my LinkedIn content or listened to my podcast, and I have no signals there. And then suddenly they just book a call, and I went from awareness to opportunity, which is awesome, but not every customer does that. And the goal is to create meaningful content that guides them through their journey, helps them understand the problems that they're facing, and then as a result, frames you as a viable solution, and then qualifies them to actually buy your stuff right now. If you want a quick example, this is my actual marketing program. This is how we've generated now 1.7 million in 16 months with like less than 10 grand a month in spend, including my time. I spend 40 hours a month on sales, by the way. So how do we actually get to this? I'm so glad you asked. I'm going to break this down and walk you through step by step how you can right now build your own ABM program framework. Let's build. So the first question, what are you currently doing? There's a lot of stuff you could be doing. But as you look at your current marketing programs, ask, like, what are you currently doing? Some of you guys are just doing good vibes, spaghetti and prayers. Been there. This structure will help turn those good vibes and spaghetti and prayers into something more intentional and strategic. That then begs the question, what are you measuring? For a lot of people, they're not measuring a lot of things. Like they're just doing stuff because that's the right things to do. And there's no measurement that is able to be captured on that can then trigger a new playbook. There's no signals that are being captured. So again, this is what most people today would be left with. This is it. That then begs the question, what could you be measuring? And when we think about what we could measure, again, the only things we can't really measure would be good vibes and prayers. What we can do, though, is put the rest of this into an intentional structure that is clear measurement for success that then guides accounts from one stage to the next. So how do we get there? So glad you asked. Here's a quick example. We've got organic LinkedIn. So I connect people, I create content. I do email. I have a website. I have a referral program. I do podcasting. I do events like this. So I got the opportunity to speak at this. This is an earned. I also do my own events. So I've got owned events and then do partnerships. So I do content swaps with our partners. And also, we do social selling. So based on people that have engaged significantly with my content, I might do an outbound program that gets them to new content, or I might do website engagement. And again, for us, when you think about it, how do we map this to the account progression model? So you have to answer the questions specifically of how does this engage best with potential customers? How does this get these same accounts to understand the problem that they're facing? How does it get these same accounts to understand that we can help their problems go away? How does it get these same accounts to buy from us to fix the problem? And how does it get these customers to stay forever and buy more? And when you think about it, here's the account progression model. So again, connections on LinkedIn, which are a measurable thing. You can measure the number of or who you've connected with. That's awareness. Content could be initial engagement. Email is initial engagement. Our website specifically, if you go to Scrappy ABM, links out to a couple of different things from a podcast and a newsletter perspective and like my LinkedIn, but everything else is super product focused. It's like, you can buy these things. That's about it. Podcasting. If we use influencers on our show, we then actually generate initial engagement because we invite influencers onto our show that are connected with our target accounts. So when they post on social about being on our podcast, it generates awareness within our target accounts and helps to build the problem, which is awesome. When we invite target accounts onto our show, that's meaningful engagement. We're building a more one-to-one relationship and helping understand how we could be a viable solution for them specifically. All of the events that I do, It's all initial engagement. It's just building pain, building problems, providing some information on how to solve viable problems. And then social selling. Content is meaningful engagement. We are building viable use cases and solutions. And then lastly, website engagement is still focused on re-engagement. So the goal is, hey, you've been to our stuff, you've engaged with some of our content, you might be interested in building an ABM program. I'd love to help you do just that. As we then think through an example of owned events or earned events and how you can track this. If you want to scan this QR code right now, it'll take you to our newsletter, and then you can subscribe to our newsletter. And this QR code has got tracking on it that allows us to actually see who is subscribing to our newsletter from different places. I want to give context. If you looked at my program, which we'll come back to here in just a moment, I'm not going to sell you. I just want you to engage with the content and actually get some help. If you ever want to buy, awesome. I have other signals down the way that help me to know that you're in more of a buying mode. But for right now, this is perfect for just building a relationship and helping you out along the way. So if you want a quick breakdown, I'm happy to send over our slides and you can dig into this way more, but as a TLDR version. LinkedIn connections. We focus on ICP fit buyers, and then we use Ample Market for some of our LinkedIn automation and data enrichment. So as a result, we're doing Ample Market to build that list. From there, we then run a connection campaign as distribution. So that gets me connected with our right fit buyers. And then from there, they go to my LinkedIn profile. Our LinkedIn profile is optimized to educate people on who we are, what we do, and specifically see if they're interested in just having my content show up in their feed. And then from there, it's a connection acceptance. From there, based on people that are ICP fits and LinkedIn connections, because again, through Ample Market, I can actually filter down just by first party connections. That is my data source. From there, I end up transitioning them into specifically distribution. So we are sending them emails about events. We are engaging in their social content. We are also inviting them to LinkedIn events because I can invite first party connections to LinkedIn events. The goal is to then get them registered through a destination page. And then we track that as a event registration. Third, content engagement. So if someone's an ICP fit and they're highly engaged, then the goal here is to follow up with next step content. There's a tool called Air Traffic Control that can automate some of this, but it's super helpful as a way to directly get people engaged in the right next step content for them based on their past engagement. So that then leads into distribution, which is one-to-one email, LinkedIn DMs, and then social content tags. If you see something that's relevant for somebody else, tag them in it. That then leads into a destination, which could be podcast episodes for us. We did a show with Audience Plus called ABMify. We also have a masterclass that we did with usership, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. And also product pages. So if somebody's super, super engaged, it might be, hey, it's time to actually consider potentially partnering. Hopefully that's helpful. And then we track all of that through our B2B and then HubSpot. You get the idea here. The goal is to have clear data sources that gets into distribution, that gets into where we're sending them and how we track it. This is a much more detailed version that you would want to inevitably build out, but for the purposes of this presentation like this, I just kind of wanted to give you the TLDR. If you want this template, I'm happy to actually send you this template as well. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll send you the template. That said, this is how we then structured LinkedIn podcasts, events, website engagement, all into a repeatable account progression model that engages our right fit customers. And once somebody actually enters into our pipeline, we close at 40%. So this is something that I know is highly effective for pipeline acceleration, increasing customer lifetime value, and as a result, increasing deal sizes. If you want an example, you can scroll back for LinkedIn post where I talk through how we 3x our customer lifetime value in the past 6 months, using some of our programs and our processes here to target better fit customers. So this is what I'd recommend you walk away with as something you can start to execute up against right now. I just walked through this in like 20 minutes and I gave you as much as I could. There's a lot of information. Feel free to ask questions. And again, here's the TLDR version of the 4D framework. If you missed it, here's an opportunity to take a quick screenshot. Last two things, and then we are at time. You will likely have some gaps. Like this is not a full solution. This is to get you started. And the recommendation is to map out the current programs using the 4D framework as a diagnostic tool. If you use it as a diagnostic tool to identify your different opportunities and gaps, you can then figure out where you need to optimize the existing programs. For a lot of people, that is typically the direction component of we're doing a lot of things. We aren't tracking them in such a way that we can capture viable signals, at which point you then go solve that specific problem. So you figure out how to track those signals. So that's the first thing. Second thing, well, I just talked through it. So you make adjustments to how you track. So the goal is that your direction of an awareness level program should then feed into the initial engagement type program. So if you are doing things at awareness levels that aren't able to be activated on at the initial engagement level, You then want to create a new way of tracking and a new direction capability. And then lastly, is you identify your missing playbooks. We launched a newsletter because we really struggled to go from awareness to meaningful engagement. So we created a newsletter that is entirely focused on helping people build ABM programs today as a way of generating initial engagement. I will likely not convert like a, what is it, like 98% of the people that subscribe to our newsletter because they're not our target accounts. I'm only focused on engaging those target accounts. So again, you're welcome to subscribe to the newsletter. Hopefully it's super helpful. Last thing, 2 free things. UserGens and I partnered to build a masterclass on how to do ABM. It is literally 2.5 hours. So if you enjoyed this like 25-minute session, this goes exponentially deeper on how to build this in excruciating levels of detail. That's the first thing. You can see in this QR code to get that, or you can just go to usergems.com in the resources tab. There's a scrappy ABM masterclass. That's the first thing. Second thing, highly recommend this newsletter. Could not recommend it enough, simply because I try to actually give everything away for free and help you build programs today. So if you're trying to build ABM, I also want to give context. I have like 1 client slot left, and I've got probably 15 people in pipeline right now. I'm not sure that I can take on any new customers for the next 6 months. So I'm not trying to sell anything. Please get this resource. Please use it, build successful programs. Tell me how awesome your programs are. And I'd love to invite you on the podcast to walk through it. So that is everything that I've got for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Jenny, I think you are back up.
Well, thank you again for joining us. It's always a joy.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.